which means we are moving on to item E for the presentations and the action items. And the first one is our number 15 update on COVID and the school reopening. So Marcy, if you want to take it away on what's happening with our school reopening. I know there's a lot that's happened statewide since we last talked to you.
It certainly has, and we've been very busy since we last had our last presentation on February 9th. Because of the back-to-back board meetings on March 2nd and March 9th, we wanted to be sure, since our next meeting isn't until April 13th, to get as much planning in as possible. And so tonight is our number 15. So happy to have here tonight with us for this presentation, Matt Catanzari, Principal at Whitehill, Eric Sable, Director of Student Services, Julia Wolcott, Director of Curriculum and Instruction, and myself. And this meeting tonight and this presentation just really marks a milestone in the work that we've been doing since our schools closed almost a year ago. March 13th was our last student day in the 1920 school year in person. And from then on, for the remainder of that school year, we went into distance learning only, and then our planning began for the reopening of the 2021 school year. So it's been a long time, and we are so excited and happy to be moving on in our phased return, and happy to give you some updates tonight. And so as we know with the changes, there's one thing that we're used to with COVID-19 is that there are changes all the time and things get updated. Our guidelines might change, the status, everything that we have related to how the positive case rates are determined and what that means for counties. And once again, we do have an update to our blueprint for a safer economy. I'm so happy to report that Marin County remains in Tier 2 or red status for a third week. We were moved into the red status on February 23rd, and happy to say that we're continuing on in that red status, hopefully continuing with the lower case rates and moving on into hopefully soon into the orange tier or Tier 3 orange. Our California Department of Public Health did provide an update to the Blueprint for a Safer Economy on March 4th. And that is, as you'll all remember, a statewide plan for reducing COVID-19 and keeping California healthy and safe. And this table here on this slide outlines the requirements for case rates in each of the tiers. Has to do with case rates, test positive rates, quartile test positivity rates for each of the tier status. And then as of March 2nd, CDPH's assessment for Marin County. And so with just the adjusted case rate per 100,000 residents in Marin, down to 5.5, overall test positive rate, positivity rate 1.9%, and the equity quartile, because that was a big part that they added to the state guidance. And monitoring is ensuring that that there's an equity lens related to everything in how we are tackling COVID-19. So those are trending positive for us. And you can see then that with a 5.5 right now, we're kind of smack dab in the middle of Tier 2. We need to get down to no more than 3.9. And we're right there on that border of the 2% overall positivity rate. And Marin County, happy to report, is well within the need for even Tier 4 related to the equity quartile. So we're doing a great job in Marin County with our equity work on that track. And let's see, in order for a county to advance to a less restrictive tier, it must have been in the current tier for a minimum of 3 weeks. And here we are in our current tier for 3 weeks. And we need to meet the criteria for the next less restrictive tier, which would be Tier 3 or orange, for all 3 measures for the prior 2 consecutive weeks in order to progress to the next tier. So as we're working to stay in our current tier, we'll always have our eyes and sights set on getting into a less restrictive tier and monitoring everything related to that. And this link here for a blueprint for a safer economy dashboard is live. And so if anyone goes to the PowerPoint on our, the board docs, our agenda tonight, that link will be live there. And so any questions on the blueprint? Alrighty, next slide then. In Marin County, as we do move into the different tiers and the levels, our colors change. So last time on February 9th, when we did our board update, this dashboard for Marin was purple. And now because we're in the red, it is moved to the red or the tier 2 status. And good news to report is since the last update to you all, there's been no change in suspected in-school transmissions. So that rate there still of suspected in-school transmission is at 11 and countywide, and that's breaks down to between student to student is 6 suspected in-school transmissions, adult to adult 3, adult to student 2, and student to adult 0. And so that's great that we're holding steady and have not seen any increased cases within our schools. And of course, we would expect that just because Marin County has been doing well and continues to do better with the case rates. So that's great that we're holding steady there. So we're not seeing any increased rates. And then in Marin County, there's an overall student percentage of 72% of students attending school in person. And in Ross Valley, we have approximately currently right now in our current hybrid 3.2 phase 3.2 is 70% of our students are currently attending in person. And off to the right is our RVSD dashboard. The link up at the top is live. It sits on our district website and it gets updated. And I'm happy to report that we haven't had to update our dashboard since February 10th. So we're right along in line with what we're seeing in the county is no changes. And in our district, we've had no changes since the February 10th update. And in our district, we have only one suspected in-school transmission, and that was would have been student to student. So we don't have any adult to adult or adult to student or student to adult transmissions. So that's good news for us as well.
All right, so this is a familiar slide for all of you and showing our phased return to in-person instruction. And for the last couple of board meetings, we've begun our slide at phase 3 because we're well into our pathway of return. And right now, currently in phase 3.2, having some students attending in-person instruction 4 days a week, those who have demonstrated need. We've been combining small cohorts at some of our sites where we're able to do that. And we even have some classes who have decided to return full-time kind of ahead of our phase 4 plan, which takes us to phase 4. We did announce to our parent community that beginning April 12th, we will begin our phase 4 of instruction, which means that students at the elementary level through 5th grade really will be attending school 5 days a week with early dismissal, meaning before 3 o'clock and no earlier than 1 o'clock. And our 6th through 8th grade, Matt is going to be explaining a little bit more about this later, but they will be attending at a minimum 75% of the time. And we're excited to be moving forward on this path and looking forward to that phase 5, which we anticipate will be the case when we return in the fall or in August, really, it's still summer, where we will have 5 days a week of in-person instruction at a regular pre-pandemic school day length of day. All right.
All righty, and in our phase 4, we are so very excited to be beginning that for our TK through 6th graders on April 12th. And for our 7th and 8th graders, they're actually going to start a little bit sooner on March 29th. That's the intended start dates for both of those. And so, as I said at the top of the meeting, we are coming up on our 1-year anniversary of COVID-19 affecting all of our schools, and with shutting down beginning on March 16th, 2020. And we've been planning for this phase 4, getting all of our students back onto campus. Unfortunately, we weren't able to do that as the school year started. As Marin County, we needed to start off in distance learning still. But we've been working for about 9 months in getting to this phase of being able to reopen our schools. And it's a very exciting time. We are so excited to be able to have coming up more students on our campuses, and where our classrooms at the elementary level have had to have been split in half in order to maintain the 6 feet distancing. And we've had our A and B cohorts. We are very much looking forward to being able to combine those and have all of the students in a classroom back on the campus. So it's a big time for celebration, and also a time for appreciation for everything that all of our employees, our teachers, our faculty, and our staff have done to get us to this phase, as well as our families. This has been also a heavy lift, a huge impact for our families. And so we are just super appreciative that this spring, right after spring break, we'll be able to begin phase 4. So very excited to be able to announce that. And all along in our planning, we have followed the data and the research. And as this pandemic has worn on, more and more data is known and has been revealed. And we know that our schools are safe. With all of the positive cases in Marin, as mentioned earlier, only 11 have been attributed to any school-based transmissions. In RVSD, as you saw on the previous slide with the district dashboard, of the 34 total exposures and positive cases, only 1 is suspected to have occurred on a campus. That means that all the other 33 were community-based. And that is also, like all of Marin County schools, is the majority of the transmissions in Marin had been out in the community, not in our schools. And this goes to show that all of our health and safety protocols, our daily check-ins and monitoring, hand washing, sanitizing, distancing, face coverings, cleaning, disinfecting, they're all working. And we know that our students' academic growth and social emotional well-being are best supported when they are on campus for school. Distance learning has been a necessary part of our phased return from the beginning back in March of 2020 and this fall when our schools were closed to in-person instruction. And we're very proud of and thankful again for our teachers, staff, and faculty, parents, and our students for being able to ride through this with us, to be patient, to be agile, flexible, adaptable, and creative as we get into our next phase. And we're thrilled that once again, Marin was able to get the majority of the folks in Marin with the older population, our healthcare providers vaccinated so that educators could be prioritized, and that Marin Health and Human Services and MCOE worked together to schedule 2 super pod Saturdays, as they're called, and to ensure that all 4,000 Marin educators are able to receive the vaccine. I volunteered at the vaccination super pod this last weekend, and we administered over 2,000 doses, 2,049 to be exact, were administered this last Saturday. And I loved being able to see all of the educators, some I knew, of course, from our own school district, from other school districts, and other private and schools in Marin, who were able to come through that line. And you could see, even with masks on, the sheer excitement, thrill, exhilaration, and just the feeling of calm and thankfulness for finally being able to get the vaccine. And the signs of relief, it was just palpable on so many faces. It was a very exciting day. Long, was there about maybe 11 hours total that day on my feet, but it was a great day, so well worth it. And by the implementation of our phase 4, all RVSD employees will have been able to have been vaccinated. Vaccine effectiveness is estimated to be 51% within 2 weeks after the first dose and 92% within 2 weeks after the second dose. And the majority of our employees were able to be vaccinated before last Saturday, March 6th. And so for them, when they get their second dose, that'll come up well before our April 12th return. And the next date of the vaccination event for educators is this Saturday, March 13th. And so all adults in our schools will have been able to, those who will get vaccinated are able to be fully vaccinated no later than April 10th, because that second date for the folks who would get vaccinated this Saturday is April 3rd. So that's their second vaccination date. And it's just interesting to note that this last Saturday was the single largest vaccination event in Marin County history since September 23rd to 1963, which was the KO Polio Day. So very exciting times, and very happy to see that all of our Ross Valley educators included amongst those who will be vaccinated by the time we do start our phase 4. So we know, looking at the data, following the data and our protocols, that schools are a safe place, and we're ready to go.
Great job, Marcy. Great job. And good, thanks for the 11 hours on your feet. That's a lot of work. And I'm sure it felt good for all the educators to just kind of have a big appreciation for each other, and knowing they've made it this far, and the energy was exciting to see. And thanks for putting in that time, man. That's a lot of hours. I appreciate your effort very much.
Thank you, Ryan. And in preparation for the beginning of phase 4, some of our classrooms have begun having all their students back in person. And so these pictures are of one of our classes out on the yard and in their classroom on their first day back today with their entire class. And we have a total of 6 elementary classes that will have begun the full return prior to April 12th. And this is good practice so that we know, like the retaping, the organizing the classrooms, as well as to ensure all of our protocols can be revised if needed, and our sites are prepared for when all students begin in person. So as part of the planning is the HVAC system. You can see of course, in the upper picture, they're outside, but it's great. These are kindergartners, and to be able to see that even the group on the ground talking together, they are maintaining their distance, and they're getting their wiggles out by being able to get outside. And then in our classroom picture here, these are sliders in this classroom, and they're fully open, as well as the door. There's a door at the back side of the classroom as well as the front side. And there's also sliders at the front side of this classroom too. So as you can see, there are some students with their hoodies, with their beanies, and parkas, just keeping warm, as today was a relatively cold day with the rain. But it's exciting to see, and it's great that we've had some of these classes be able to begin so that we can ensure that this next phase goes off without a hitch, and that our case rates and our exposures do not increase. We'll stick with our total of 34 potential or exposures and or positive cases, but only 1 suspected in school. And that's where we're going to stay. That's it for the remainder of the year. We know we're positive of that. Well, we can hope to be. And so we think with all of our protocols and all the planning that we've done that we'll be able to continue on well through the end of the year. All right, and Eric, you're up.
Okay, thank you. Eric Sable, Director of Student Services. This is actually another image from Brookside Elementary. Miss Molyneux leading a couple of her preschool kiddos to school a little bit earlier this year. One thing that has been incredibly beneficial about us extending the school day following our February break is that it's given our special education additional service providers more time to work with students while they're at school. Because we are in what is considered to be emergency circumstances with the pandemic, the restrictions on gathering, the restrictions on related to social distancing, services like speech, like occupational therapy, like class, all of those have been radically shifted. For example, prior we couldn't have groups coming into a group speech session or group OT session from different cohorts because of the COVID guidelines. And also too, because of the fact that we weren't at school in person for quite as long, though of course our service providers were also and continue to do some of their work virtually. But long story short, is that now with the kiddos on campus for more time in our SDC classrooms at Brookside Elementary, for example, go until 2 p.m. So that is really exciting because it's helping those service providers have more time and opportunity for speech services, for occupational therapy, whether it's individual, whether it's group. You walk around the campus, you see the staff out and about outside doing group sessions where we know that those are the safest conditions. And of course, able to push in and work with the teachers in their classrooms as appropriate. So now this doesn't mean that we have been able to return to normal, where we're able to provide all of the services in the minute. Well, we do provide all the services, but all of the exact minutes that are in a student's IEP, again, because of the emergency circumstances and because of those restrictions. But we're getting closer to that normalcy. So this is really exciting to see. It's obviously great for our students, for our families, and it's also really exciting for our staff. And I'm grateful for all of the educators in Ross Valley School District, across Marin County, across the state and nation. But I really do tip my hat to our special education team who, again, at the Brookside campus and at White Hill, had students back in person for 5 days a week starting October 5th, 2020. So we continue to see progress in this, and we know that as we move towards 5 days a week for all students, this reality will just continue to get us closer to that normalcy that we all want.
All right, and Matt. Thank you.
Thank you for having me again for a White Hill update. As we mentioned, I'm going to go in chronological order, starting with March 29th. And March 29th is when we plan on increasing our in-person time for our 7th and 8th graders. And the reason that March 29th is the date for that increase is that is the beginning of Q4. So it is hard to believe that we are almost 3/4 through the year, but we have made it this far. And our teachers, 7th and 8th grade teachers, felt pretty strongly that if a shift was going to occur, it should occur when that natural break in our schedule happens. So I'm going to talk about the extended schedule for 7th and 8th grade first, and then the idea that we have and how to increase the number of days students come to school. So the image that we have here is our bell schedule that is going to be shared out with all of our families, hopefully this week. And in the Q4, we're still on our 3x3 schedule with period 0 for students that are in the B cohort, and then periods 1, 3, and 5. And if you look at this and you're familiar with our current schedule, you'll notice that nothing changes until the 12:10, the end of the nutrition break at 12:10. So in the morning, the in-person students have 0 period, 1st period, and then 3rd period. The at-home students have 0, 1, and 3, and they're participating in the lesson launch and asynchronous work, depending on what the lesson is that day for the class. Many of our 7th and 8th grade teachers are concurrently teaching throughout. So the students that are home are staying on Zoom for the majority of the class periods at the moment. And again, that's kind of determined by what is being taught that day and what the lesson is. The change starting March 29th in our schedule is after the the nutrition break from 11:55 to 12:10 is that we are going to be resuming our advisory class for 25 minutes. And then after advisory, students will finish the day in their 5th period, ending at 2 o'clock. So our dismissal will be at 2 o'clock for our 7th and 8th grade students. Looking forward to having advisory again. I feel like we missed out a little bit with our 7th and 8th graders for our community building. Advisory is also going to be used for office hours, things like that we're used to using advisory for. Prior, when we were Zooming the whole time, and also last year when we have our advisory during a normal pre-COVID school time. So that is the bell schedule for 7th and 8th grade starting March 29th. And then as far as getting students to campus more frequently, as Julia mentioned in one of those previous slides, we are looking to have students on campus 75% of the time. Currently, students are on campus 40%. So that is a significant increase, and our teachers are looking forward to it. Our students are going to be looking forward to it. I think your parents are going to look forward to it. I'm looking forward to it. So we're excited about that. And the way we're going to make that happen is if you think of our cohort A shows up on right now on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. If you think of our Tuesday schedule when cohort A is there, cohort A will continue to be there on a Tuesday, and we will add half of cohort B to that schedule. On Wednesday, cohort A will be in school, and we'll add the other half of cohort B. So cohort B will flip-flop between Tuesday and Wednesday, and then the same thing will happen with Thursday and Friday, but cohort B will show up on Thursday and Friday. Half of cohort A will show up on Thursday. The other half of cohort A will show up on Friday. And then as far as Mondays are concerned, we are going to be in person on Mondays. That'll be a shift from what our current schedule is. We will be doing something similar where Mondays will rotate between A's and B's. And I know that it is really confusing to listen to. And we are coming up with several different schedules so we can share out with families so they can see exactly what days of the week their student will be on campus and things like that. And then I want to briefly touch on 6th grade and talk a little bit about why we are waiting until April 12th to start 6th grade. As you all remember, our 6th grade schedule is unique from our 7th and 8th. We are not doing a 3x3 schedule for our 6th graders. And with that are some complexities. For one, some of those 6th grade elective teachers, they are all teaching 7th and 8th grade students. So we have to make sure the schedules overlay each other and we figure that out. The other thing that we're really looking at, there's been a huge increase in the request to return to in-person. And our 6th grade students, we've had some consistent cohort C's in 6th grade where they were able to synchronously join class every day for all of their classes. And with the number of students that have requested, families that have requested to come to in-person, that is going to shift. So there's going to be some schedule changes for students. And that is why we need a little bit more time to make that April 12th. That's why we're choosing April 12th to be after spring break, when we're going to start increasing the number of days our 6th graders are on campus. And as soon as that schedule is solidified, I will be sharing that out with all of our 6th grade families. So I'm hoping to have that out by midweek next week at the latest.
All right, any questions for Whitehill?
Question from Marie here, Matt. I paid attention to the AB cohort description that you gave, but it was very hard to follow. Yeah. So can you tell me again, when is that the parents are going to receive a date on that? Is it like mid next week, or can you repeat that? I don't need to know the details right now. I just need to know when is that we will know. You know what I'm saying? Yeah,
we still have some families that haven't responded to the survey.
Oh, got it.
The survey closes tomorrow. Mm-hmm. And so as soon as that survey closes, then we'll know where everyone stands. And I would think by the Wednesday of next week, we will have everyone with a schedule with, they're not going to change cohorts A or B. Those are going to be If they're currently in cohort A, their students are going to stay in cohort A.
Yeah.
But I will be able to share what B day the cohort A, their group of cohort A should be able to attend. So I would say by the middle of next week, that should be all solidified and ready to roll, and we can share that out.
Okay, thank you. Because as you know, a lot of parents are carpooling, and this just gives me a headache just to figure out what's going to happen with period 0 and a new carpooling arrangement that families need to make.
Right.
You know, like 1 week notice or something like that would be great. Thank you so much, Matt. Thank you for increasing the number of hours on campus. Whenever they are, we will take them. Thank you.
All right, it's very complicated, but I think, Matt, is it correct to say if you're an A, you're still going to go on Tuesday and Wednesday. If you're B, you're still going Thursday and Friday, but you get to pick up an extra day, either one of the A days or one of the B days, whatever the opposite is.
That's correct. So we'll be adding a few Mondays, and then we'll be adding one of the A or B days, depending on what your cohort is.
Super. Thank you so much.
And as we move into phase 4, we will be continuing our health and safety protocols. So our mask wearing, all persons who attend any of our campuses or our district office for work or school will need to wear masks. And where we are making a change is in the physical distancing. We're maintaining a minimum of 6 feet between staff to staff or adult to adult, and also between the staff or the adults to students. And we will be moving to a minimum, or sorry, no less than 4 feet between students. And we are, again, as I mentioned before, we're following all the data and all of the research that's out there to show the health and safety measures to have in place. And so knowing that, you know, with the CDC, they recommend no less than 3 feet. So anything more than that is a benefit. Our California Department of Public Health, in terms of its guidance for schools, says no less than 4 feet. So that is where we are going. And hand washing, sanitizing will still be in play. And so, you know, now with more kids on the elementary campuses at once, or even at our middle school, it might take a little bit more time to do the hand washing and sanitizing. And then also some of the changes that are coming up is related to quarantines. So up until the CDPH guidelines for schools came out, we were referring to our half class sizes or cohorts. And the state has gone away from that. They define a cohort as targeted supports and intervention services, and what they refer to as a classroom base, a general education classroom, is a stable group. And so based on the data that we have in Marin County related to the dashboard and the number of positives, exposures, case rates, is that what's going to be shifting is, instead of closing one of the stable groups, aka otherwise known as a cohort, we won't be doing that anymore. We'll be really relying on the contact tracing protocols that are in place, so that in the event that there is a positive case, that only those folks, the student who tested positive or had an exposure with a member of the community, then only those folks will be quarantining. And so there won't be the need to close an entire classroom, for example, or a stable group. So that's where the contact tracing that we have been doing, and in coordination with Marin Health and Human Services, that will continue. A little bit more of the onus for the contact tracing is going to be shifting to the school sites, but MHHS will be right there with us as we need to talk, get advice, or that kind of thing as to how to move forward. And we know that, let's see, did I say that? Related to what some of the questions that have come up is related to the distancing and how do you measure that? And even last week on the call with Marin Health and Human Services, we have every Thursday is a call for the public health liaisons, and each of our schools, as I mentioned before, has a minimum of 2. And as well as we have some here at the district office. We get on these calls every Thursday to get questions answered, to hear the latest. around whatever might be the guidelines, the protocols that we need to have in place. And so the recommendation is you measure either mask to mask or center of chair to center of chair. And so not the edge of the desk, for example, or the workstation, but actually where the human is. And so that's where you measure that distancing, is where the human is. And so we've gone out, a few of us, to each of the schools to just help ensure for the preparations that we're calibrating our measurings and looking at all of our furniture needs in our schools to ensure that as we have more kids back in our classrooms, that we have all of the furniture that we need. And also, just as another precautionary measure, putting up the plexiglass barriers in our schools so that where we have tables, for example, not individual student desks, there will of course be no less than 4 feet between the students, but also there will be a plexiglass barrier between them as an added measure. And so we'll just keep working on our health and safety measures, and anything that we need to shift, we will be sure to do that before we have any more students on our campuses.
All right. And in the midst of looking at reopening and talking about distancing between students and between staff, we came across this really interesting study, and it's a huge study. If you read the fine print down here at the bottom, it involved, this is in the state of Massachusetts, and it involved 243 districts with 520,129 students and 97,679 staff. So really a massive number of humans. And what the graph shows here, this top graph shows staff case rates at 3 feet of distancing and at 6 feet of distancing. And then the bottom line here are student case rates, again, at 3 feet and 6 feet. And basically, you can see in the title here, the data indicates no substantial difference in case rates for students or staff with 3 feet versus 6 feet of distancing since school reopened. So we hear it a lot, you know, the distancing we hear, and we hear in the guidance and the CDC saying 3 feet, and I found it really interesting to actually see a large study like this showing that indeed there is safety in the 3 to 4 feet of distancing. And again, we will not be going less than 4 feet of distancing between students within the Ross Valley School District, nor will we go fewer than 6 feet from staff to staff or staff to student.
And another area of our planning and related to our health and safety is natural ventilation. On our weekly public health liaison calls, Dr. Santora always reminds us that the virus hates the outdoors, and so that natural air. And this is a slide from last week's call, which was another area to know and to learn about, which is that natural ventilation. So related to the data is that we look at air changes per hour, or ACH. And in hospital standards, the ACH is 6. And what our goal is in our schools is getting down to 5. And it is interesting to note that opening windows in a 30 by 30 foot classroom, just 6 inches achieves 5 or more ACH with clean outdoor air. And more, of course, if windows or doors are also open. So just think about it, just 6 inches, 2 windows in a 30 by 30 classroom, just 2 of the windows gets you down to the 5. And so we are encouraging all of our students to, and our employees as well, to please come dressed for the weather, because whether we're utilizing our outdoor learning environments and or the interior learning environments, those doors, the windows, they're open, and we want them to be to maximize the natural ventilation. We've also, as I've talked about in previous meetings, have set our HVAC systems to maximum airflow capacity to go through the room. We've installed the MERV 13 filters in all of our classrooms. And additionally, we have purchased the air purifiers for every one of our classrooms and offices. And those air purifiers have actual filter that is better than a MERV 13. And so with all of these measures to get the natural ventilation moving throughout all of our classrooms and workspaces, that is also contributing, we believe, to our safe spaces in schools. So we're really happy to report that now there's a little bit more data and information to go along with the why. Why do we do these things in our schools?
All right, so considerations and complexities. In planning for phase 4, there's a lot to think about, and we are working collaboratively with our administrative team and our teaching team and all of our staff to determine the best way to move forward. But lots is going on, as Marcy mentioned. We've been going around measuring classrooms for different distancing configurations and taking a look at our furniture and how to maximize the furniture that we have, how to fit 2 kids at a table while making sure that there's 4 feet of distancing, and the use of the dividers, what are they called, Marcy?
The plexiglass. And not all of them are plexiglass, but they're clear plastic.
Got it.
Yeah.
And getting those in place. So lots to think about there. As Marcy again mentioned, we're super excited that all of our Ross Valley School District educators and employees will have access to vaccine, 2 doses of the vaccine before the return on April 12th. We are collaborating with our staff. We are working with our Delight leadership team. We met with them last week for a preliminary discussion. I am meeting along with principals with our AMP, our art, music, and physical education teachers this Friday to start talking about what those lessons will look like in phase 4. Parents received a survey, I believe, last Friday. And in a moment, we'll show you our current results of that survey, but we have asked for our parents to commit to either in-person or full virtual learning. And it looks like, I believe we have about 75% of our parents responding right now. And so we thank them. And if they're still waiting to respond, please do so as quickly as you can, because we really need to know what the plan is for every family so that we can move forward with our staffing plan, and particularly determining what support will look like for our full virtual learners. We will be engaging with labor partners in collective bargaining with our Ross Valley Teacher Association. And as always is the case in schools, we'll continue to work on supervision for our students. We may be soliciting parent volunteers to help with that for breaks and recess and that sort of thing.
And one of the other things that we did too is we did have a superintendent's council meeting. Was it now about 2 weeks ago? And it was great because even though it wasn't super well attended by each of our schools, site council, parent club, representatives, those who were in attendance gave great feedback and input that we've been able to use in our planning for phase 4. So it's been very helpful.
And our timeline in terms of how we're going to get there, we've talked about meeting with staff and our teacher leaders and AMP, surveying parents. We're now pretty much in the place as we get the results from the parent survey of determining classroom configurations. Next week, we'll be in negotiations with RBTA. And then we'll be able to finalize our schedule and really start our plan to get everything in place for TK through 6 for April 12th. And as Matt said, 7th and 8th are going to get a jump start on this beginning the week of March 29th. But we have a clear path ahead of us, and we're feeling really great about it and very, very appreciative to all who are working with us to make this happen. And the results to the survey. So for TK through 5th grade, we have about a 75%, so 75% of our students, families have affirmed for their student whether they will be virtual or in person. And right now, we only have 4.7% of those who have responded requesting full virtual learning. We do know, however, that the decision to remain or to enter into full virtual learning is a more difficult decision. So we anticipate that those numbers may go up in the next couple of days. And a huge thank you to our principals who've made themselves available to all families to just enter into conversation as they make this very important decision for their students, for their children. And 6th through 8th grade, they've got an 84% response rate with about 5.3 of respondents asking for full virtual learning. And until we really know for certain how many virtual learners we will have, it does make it very difficult for us to plan what that learning is going to look like. So we look forward to, we'll probably be, I think principals are reaching out to any of the current families that are in cohort C, virtual learning, to make sure that they understand what their request will be, what their requested mode of instruction will be.
This is Shelley. Can I ask one quick question? Could you just reiterate again the deadline for this? Because I'm assuming because decisions have to be made on this, which is very different than what's been happening so far, where people could move back and forth between virtual and then back in person and then back to virtual if they needed to, and that this is a real important change for everyone really to know about. And what is the absolute deadline that parents are given that said, you need to, here's the deadline? And what is that again?
This morning at 8 o'clock.
Okay.
So we're in pretty good shape, and that is why. And so what we decided was, you know, with about 25% of the kids, maybe 100 kids that we haven't heard from, those families, then what makes the most sense to us, because we did, when we sent the survey out, we did say that if we don't hear from you, the default will be your current mode of instruction. However, we don't want to make that assumption for anyone who's currently in virtual learning. So there will be a reach out to those families just to reaffirm that that is indeed their choice.
Okay, thank you very much for that.
Sure.
And White Hill's survey is due tomorrow. I think it closes at 10 o'clock a.m., if I remember right.
And they're in good shape.
Yeah.
84%.
And it's interesting to note too that the percentage, so currently in our current model of hybrid, we have about 30% of our students are in virtual learning. Mm-hmm. And you can see by these numbers that it'll be a lot fewer students who will remain in virtual learning. But it is really important that we know, and we know it's hard for some families, like what comes first, that chicken or the egg. They want to know, what will it look like for my child? We won't really know that until we know how many kids will be in virtual learning. And so for us to be able to plan and move forward, we really do need those survey results. And so as Julia said, it's been very helpful that the principals have been available to families to answer any and all questions that they have.
Yeah, and what we do know is that it will look different from the way that it has been, because when a teacher has, 20 or 23 students in front of them, it's a lot more difficult to attend to students who are at home. So managing that the roomers and zoomers, when you have a much smaller class of in-person, it's still, believe me, tremendously difficult, but it's more manageable than it would be if you've effectively got a full class of kids who need you. And so that's something that we look forward to determining.
Quick other question then. So that's still part of the figuring out process, is whether the full virtuals go to a separate class together or do the concurrent, or is concurrent not going to happen, or is that still part of the process of determining?
I'd say there's maybe 3 or 4 different scenarios that we've been talking about, and we also recognize that it may not be a one size fits all. That's kind of what we've found to be true this year, that we've had to put lots of different puzzles together all at the same time in order to make everything work. So I know it must be frustrating for families not to know exactly what things will look like, but it is a cart before the horse kind of a situation.
And very much appreciate all of that Rubik's cubing that you all have been doing over and over and over. So much work, and thank you.
Absolutely.
One of the things that we've been monitoring this school year is we've had some students leave Ross Valley, and we have paid attention to where are they going? Where did they go? And so here is a listing by each school site, the different locations or types of schooling that the children who have left us have gone to, where we know them. In some cases, we don't know. But we're looking at about total 218 students have left us this year. And for some of those families, a lot of them actually, they've indicated that they need to know from us what will next school year, that they've been able to find other locations like outdoor schools or private schools that are offering all of their students into their classes. And so once we already have stated, and we will continue to plan toward a full return with a pre-COVID type of schedule. And as we get a little further along, we will then start to do some outreach directly to the families who've left us because they will need to re-register. Some already have. I see them in our School Mint system, and they've already re-registered. And some, as we can see here, the number who've actually moved out of our schools, that's 33% of our families who did move out of the area. And so here are the numbers here and the percentages of each of those. So 32% did leave us to go to private. 12 of our Ross Valley kids are being homeschooled. 4% have left us to go to various charters. Inter district, going to other school districts, is 10%. Some who've decided not to stay after all in kindergarten, for example, or TK, they've remained in preschool, that's 3%. And as I mentioned, 33% have moved and 5% are unknown, not quite sure where they've gone. But any questions about the students who've left us?
Marie here, not a question, but a comment. I do thank you for putting this table in front of us, specifically as we are going to review and approve the budget interim, because there is definitely a lot of concern and modeling to do as we see enrollment going down. And I look forward to see how many of those students will come back next year, because until the first day of school where they are in the school, until then, I do not believe we will know for sure who is coming back, really. There might be some intent, but I think it's fascinating. Thank you so much for sharing with all of us.
You're welcome.
Yeah, very useful.
And one of the things which I'm not sure if we hit that tonight, related to the elementary school schedule, is we're looking at the end of the school day being no earlier than 1 o'clock. And as soon as we have the schedule worked out and the details, we will be letting our families know exactly what the school day is going to look like. And just like with moving into hybrid, the schedule will have some flexibility, like there will be a common amount across all of our schools for the amount of break or recess time, but how a school chooses to organize that amount will be up to them. And so we'll look at having consistent learning blocks and times for each of the schools. And then again, yes, we will be fully open in the 21-22 school year. And as Dr. Willis has let us know, or from a part I pulled out of the IJ on March 2nd, is that he anticipates we'll still have to use face coverings and monitor the variants, but I do see schools coming back full time in the fall. And so we too are planning for that, and we're looking forward to it. In our interim step is getting to phase 4 and being very excited to be able to have all of our students, and not just some of our students, on our campuses. And then even as we plan for next year, just as with looking to come back into or expand and go into phase 4, we do know that some of our families may need to have a virtual learning option next school year. So we will be also asking families to commit for next school year and to let us know what model, so that we can plan for any type of virtual learning that may need to be provided next school year. But we're planning for a full return, and then of course, as needed, a virtual learning option for any of our families. Let's see, anything else? That's right now, we don't know what any guidelines might be in place, but I think Dr. Willis here has given us a good heads up, or at least a little bit of an insight. So we know that at the minimum, face coverings will be at play for next school year as well. All right, and any questions on any of our schools reopening update number 15 tonight?
It's Wesley. I thank you very much for the presentation. I don't have any questions.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to also just reiterate that I really appreciate the amount of thought and helpful information that you all have put into communicating every time. I know, as I mentioned, it keeps changing and you keep redoing the puzzle. And then not only do you do it and implement it, but then you come and present this information. So thank you so much for putting in the time to make this available to us, to then upload it onto our website so that other parents can see it if they weren't able to listen to this tonight. And thank you so much for all that effort.
You're welcome. And after tonight's board meeting, by the end of the week, Sean will, of course, do what he's done, which is to just take this excerpt for this part of the board meeting tonight, and I'll email it out to all of our staff and families.
Thank you so much for starting to do that. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Alrighty, so I'll go ahead and share my screen and we can go back onto our agenda.
All right, so we then are going to be on to the next agenda, which is the recommended approval of disbursement for Ross Valley Healthy Communities Collaborative.